everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel here. As here we are, we've made it all the way to the end of the 2019 CFL regular season here, and for my Calgary Stampeders here, we had to sell for something at the end of the day, not exactly getting what we want here, as you find out what I mean, as it's time for another episode of... Hi there, it's Brett Hornby here. So welcome back to my YouTube channel here, as it's time for the next episode of my Calgary Stampeders this month here, and there's only one game to recap here in November here, just before the road to the 107th Grey Cup here, but this one game still had a lot of playoff implications here, and especially the last day of the regular season. On the west side of the bracket, definitely had a lot of playoff implications here, and as you'll find out what I mean, that the Calgary Stampeders ultimately had to settle for something at the end of the day here, as they had some control in their fate, but not total control here to get the ultimate prize to make the road to the Grey Cup a little easier here, but we made the best out of the situation here. As thanks for watching along here, as this is season 2, episode 7 here, the last episode of the regular season here in my Calgary Stampeders month. Second season, I can't believe I've been doing this for 2 seasons here. And what my plan is that after this episode here, like I did last year, I'll do my On the Road to the Grey Cup videos, where I'll preview the East and West semi-final games. I'll try to have those videos up by Friday before the weekend, and then the same thing with the East and West final here, and then the 107th Grey Cup would just be the same format, where I just get the introduction of the series and break down the facets of each game, and then, like last year, all 5 playoff games are going to be played outside, so I'm going to give the weather forecast, and then I'll just give my feelings and my team who I think is going to win, and do a pickup style and give them my confidence level there. So that's what my plan is for the next month here, recap the CFL, and then there will be an episode 8 of my Calgary Stampeders this month, where I'll recap the playoffs. We knew we were going to the playoffs, but it was just a matter of who, where, when we're playing here, which ultimately came down to the final day, and then I'll recap playoffs, and I'll recap the 107th game, Grey Cup game, regardless who plays. Obviously, if you go back to season 1 here, it really worked out with me celebrating and jumping up and down at the end here, and hopefully I'll get to do the same this year, but I'll recap the 107th Grey Cup game in the episode 8 here. So enough about what I plan to do here in the next month here. Let's recap what has happened and what we know going ahead, as we know the road to the 107th Grey Cup, especially the west side of the bracket, is fully constructed now. But let's recap the final game of the regular season here for the Calgary Stampeders, and actually was the last game of the 2019 CFL regular season game here. So and there was definitely still some playoff implications here. So if you go back to Saturday, November the 2nd here, the Calgary Stampeders were taking on the BC Lions at BC Place. That was an 8 p.m. mountain kickoff here, and it was a final regular season game. And my Calgary Stampeders, with a win, we're still playing for a home playoff date here. And as you'll find out at the end here, what home playoff date we were playing for was definitely the answer here. You might get my tone here. Stampeders still had tons to play for. BC Lions, they had nothing to play for other than pride, and maybe make a case for still being around for 2020 here, as the BC Lions, they were definitely underachieved this year and had a rough season, and I said they were done in August, and definitely was the case here. So yeah, as I say, the Stampeders had a home playoff date to play for, the Lions playing for pride and looking ahead to 2020 here. So I said BC had the ball first on the opening drive, however it rose to 2-0 here. Calgary on their first drive after the punt there, Calgary was actually able to move the ball here and actually scored on their opening drive. It was a 28-yard field goal by Rene Paredes. So Calgary had an early 3-0 lead in the game here. However, late in the quarter here, Calgary was moving the ball again. TJ Lee, one of their top secondary guys for the BC Lions, quashed that drive with an interception here. However, BC was deep in their own territory where that interception happened here. And then Calgary's defense was able to stop BC as they couldn't get out of their own territory there. So ultimately, they conceded a safety here. So Calgary was able to get 2 more points. So it was 5-0 Calgary there in the first quarter. Now the next drive, late in the first quarter, Rene Paredes kicked another field goal here, this time from 41 yards here. So it was 8-0 Calgary late in the first quarter here. And that's what you got, an 8-0 lead for Calgary after the first quarter here. How I felt coming into this game here, and how it's performed here is that Calgary was moving the ball, but once again, they've been inconsistent at times, and could have finished off some drives here, but can't complain about an 8-0 lead here. However, the BC Lions, they were able to get on the board early in the second quarter here, is that they had the ball late in the first quarter, and going in early in the second quarter here, as that Sergio Castillo, the kicker for the BC Lions, made a 34-yard field goal. So now we have an 8-3 game here for Calgary early in the second quarter here. Next couple drives, I mean, there were 2 and outs here. I mean, this wasn't definitely a spectacle of a game for the final regular season game of the regular season here. However, it is what it is here. I mean, the schedule's made and the games are played here. So after a couple 2 and outs here, Calgary got a drive going past the 5-minute mark. And just before the midway mark of the second quarter here, Rene Paredes, with just past the 5-minute mark, got another field goal here, this time for 44 yards. So Calgary now was up 11-3 here, let's say halfway through the fourth quarter here. After another 2 and out, BC had another 2 and out there, which just means they had the ball, and you know, you got 3 downs in CFL there, and they couldn't get a first down on that first possession there, so it was a quick drive for them. Calgary had the ball back and from a punt. Another 4-minute drive, got down just before the 3-minute warning. Calgary once again had to settle for another field goal as they couldn't find the end zone. Rene adds another 25-yard field goal there, which that's shorter than Convert, which is a 32-yard kick right in the middle of the uprights here. So Calgary had a 14-3 lead, and that's where we were at halftime here, as Calgary looked like the better team here, but looked like they couldn't fully get things going on the offense here, but they did have a 14-3 lead in the half here. So how does the second half shape up here? Third quarter didn't feature much until about 5 minutes left in the third quarter here. BC Lions had a 5.5-minute drive here, as they were able to find the end zone here, including on that drive. They had a 3rd down gamble play where John White had a 26-yard run, big play there, and then Brandon Bridge, who was the starting quarterback for the BC Lions, as Mike Riley a couple weeks ago broke his wrist, so that was a try. I meant all 9 original starting quarterbacks at the start of the year sustained an injury at one point of the season, and when Mike Riley broke his wrist for the BC Lions, they were done anyways in terms of playoff implications. So Mike Riley was shut down long before this game here. So Brandon Bridge, he did drive the BC Lions down the field here, and then former Eskimo and backup Danny O'Brien was into running a 1-yard play here. So that was the game's first touchdown here. And then the point conversion here made it a 14-10 game. So it was 14-10 Calgary as we were getting towards the latter parts of the third quarter here. Late in the quarter, Calgary and BC each had drives that ended with a fumble here, but nothing transpired. And just like, as I mentioned here, it was 14-10 Calgary after the third quarter here. So what does the fourth quarter have in store here? Well, Brandon Bridge had the ball, and the BC Lions had the ball to start the fourth quarter here. They got in the midfield here. However, Brandon Bridge threw one of his 2 interceptions here. First one was Lenzo Jerome picked up the interception here with 12.5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter here. However, Calgary didn't capitalize on the turnover here. And then the BC On the next drive, they got stopped a couple times by recently signed defensive back Dexter Mccoy here. He actually was on the Edmonton Eskimos team. Actually, I believe he won top rookie a couple years ago. He was on the 2015 Grey Cup team, and then he played with my San Diego Chargers in the NFL and the San Francisco 49ers for your release. So Calgary picked up Dexter Mccoy a couple games ago for the stretch drive here. So you might hear his name again here later in this recap here. So with under 7 minutes to go in the fourth quarter here, Calgary was able to get a nice drive going along here as Calgary eventually was able to get a touchdown themselves as Bully Van Mitchell was able to connect with Hergy Mahala, who's one rookie receiver that suddenly has picked up for us down the stretch here, and then the point after. So it was a 21-10 Calgary game here with just under 3 minutes to go here. So we're feeling a little easier here as we finally had a drive that we capitalized on. However, BC was able to answer back right on the next drive here as Brandon Bridge, he got a few long plays by receiver Ryan Langford for the BC Lions here. And they closed out the drive here with Brian Burnham. He still had a great career season here despite the BC Lions not going to the playoffs here on a 17-yard play. So on just of that touchdown, it closed the gap to 21-16 for the Calgary Stampeders here. And this was the right call at the time, but the BC Lions attempted a 2-point conversion to potentially close the gap to 3 points, because a point after not converting, you're still going to have to go for a touchdown to win the game here. But BC needed to hopefully maybe settle for a field goal to tie here, so it was the right call for the BC Lions to go for a 2-point conversion here. However, they failed on the 2-point conversion, so it made it 21-16 here. So BC Lions, they were definitely going to need to get the ball back and try to score a touchdown with less than 2 minutes to go here. So that could be huge here, is that the Calgary Stampeders still had a 5-point lead here. So on the next play here, the BC Lions were attempting the onside kick here, similar to when last time we played the BC Lions, except Calgary was trying to come back. Although Calgary, when they attempted the onside kick, they got the ball back on that. However, the BC Lions, they did not get the ball back on the onside kick here. However, on that drive that the Calgary got the ball here, they did not do anything much with it, as there was a 2-and-out, and they hardly took any time off the clock here. So the BC Lions eventually got the ball back on the BC 29-yard line with just under a minute and a half to go here. As I said, looking for that touchdown to potentially pull out a victory here late here, kind of similar to what happened back in, I think it was week 3 there, when Calgary had that crazy game there. However, Brandon Bridge, he got the BC Lions to midfield, and they needed to keep a play drive going on a 3rd down conversion, which he was able to do so with a Shaq Johnson play here. However, Brandon Bridge was looking deep into Calgary territory there to get in good position here. However, he threw an interception to Dexter Mccoy, as I mentioned, the guy that we recently signed here for the stretch drive here. And then he returned it deep into BC territory there before he was tackled out here. So eventually the Calgary Stampeders were able to set out, run out the clock, and won this game 21-16 here. So with the win here, the Calgary Stampeders finished the regular season 12-6. So not a bad record for the regular season here, considering all the injuries. And if you had told me we would finish 12-6, and we've lost all our, we lost our defensive coordinator to be the head coach of the BC Lions, and all the turnover we had on defense, and also not have Bo for a good third of the season here, I would actually take that. However, that wasn't enough for Calgary to host the Western Final here, as unfortunately the Edmonton Eskimos could not do us a favor here as they played Saskatchewan back-to-back there, and the Saskatchewan Roughriders actually finished first in the West Division here. So the Calgary Stampeders ultimately had to settle for 2nd place, and they will get to host the West semi-final here, and they will take on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers here. So So Calgary finishes a strong second at the 12-6 record here, and we'll get to host the West semifinal here, as I'll get to the standing story here shortly here. The loss to BC Lions, they fall to 5-13 here, but the one key record here you could say about BC Lions is that they were shut out against the West. They went 0-10 against the West Division this year, so it's definitely another big reason why I thought the BC Lions were done well into August there, because all the games that they lost in the West there, and they had a couple 3-game series earlier in the season that they were already lost the season series on. So yeah, I'm going to have to say it'd be interesting to see what changes will transpire here. So when we look at the numbers here from this game, before I go over final numbers and team award nominees and set up the playoff bracket, that's where I'll look ahead to that. Bo, he was okay. He was 20 for 38. He had 283 yards, a touchdown, and interception here. The one sore spot for the Calgary Stampeders is, actually I saw a stat that Calgary was the highest passing team in the league in terms of yards per game, and the worst rushing team in the league in terms of yards per game. Don Jackson, he only had 8 carries for 34 yards here, and now he's the leading rusher for the Calgary Stampeders here. A couple of receivers stood out here, as Hergy Maala was the leading receiver. He had 5 catches for 103 yards, including the touchdown here. Eric Rogers did not play in this game, so Aaron Peck, he drew into the lineup, and he had 3 catches for 63 yards here. So maybe here's some depth here, because I know Aaron Peck had a solid game, the one game that Reggie Bagleton did not place. Well, speaking of Reggie, he had 6 catches for 60 yards here. And then if you look on the defensive side of the ball here, Nate Hawley led the way with 9 tackles here. Lenzer Drome had 5 tackles for the interception. And Dexter Mccoy, who actually I think this was only his second or third game playing as a Calgary Stampeder here, he had 3 tackles, including that big interception late in the game here to seal it, and 1 pass deflection there. So Dexter Mccoy is making an appearance already for Calgary, and maybe someone that could come up big for us in the playoffs here. So on the BC Lions side of the ball here, Brandon Bridge, he was 14 for 22. He had 294 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions here. John White was the leading rusher for the Lions. He had 17 carries on 44 yards. However, Brandon Rutley also had only 2 carries, but he had 40 yards on the ground here. So when it comes to the receivers here, well, Ryan Burnham led the way with 7 catches, 91 yards. Ryan Lakeford had 3 catches for 53 yards, including a couple connects on that last drive there. And then TJ Lee, who led the way defensively for the BC Lions, 7 tackles, that 1 interception, and 1 pass deflection. And then I'll highlight Brandon Dozer, who had 6 tackles. So that's the story for the game here. So now let's take a look at some award winners, the team award nominees, and we'll also look at the final CFL standings, and I'll take a look at some player stats here, who led the team for the Calgary Stampeders, and then we'll look ahead to the bracket here that we'll set up for the 107th Grey Cup, as we know the road to that. And as I mentioned, we're going to be hosting the West semifinal game here. So here are the team award nominees for the Calgary Stampeders here. For most outstanding player here, definitely no brainer. I definitely would agree with this one. Let's go to Reggie Bagleton. He definitely had a breakout year for the Calgary Stampeders here. He had over 1,400 yards receiving for the Calgary Stampeders, and so Reggie Bagleton is the team nominee for the player MLP. I'm not too sure if he'll get out for the West there. That'll be something maybe I'll cover in the episode 8 here, who won the awards. For the defensive player, I think this is another unanimous decision. Trey Roberson, he definitely had a breakout season with all the interceptions that he caught, especially the early part of the season there, but he definitely kept our secondary in check here, because another opposition quarterbacks here, because he made our secondary better, because now everyone's scared to throw the ridge to Trey Roberson's side. Other guys picked it up too, so definitely a no-brainer there. Canadian, well, he definitely had a great season when he was healthy, but there's actually some word that he might actually play and be available for us in the playoffs is Kroy Greenwood. I'd say he definitely was the leading tackler there in the league there until he got hurt. Definitely stepped up big for Alex Singleton, as actually he has played a few games with the Philadelphia Eagles there after he started with the season on the practice roster. And apparently he was this close to coming back with the Stampeders here, but because he did not initially make the roster for the Philadelphia Eagles here, but financially you're still better off being on the practice roster, and he actually has played. So Kroy Greenwood definitely stood out as a top Canadian here, and hopefully we'll have him in the playoffs, as there's a possibility he will be. Offensive lineman here, there was two guys that I thought could have gotten it, but this one went to Shane Bergman. I think he played every 18 games of the regular season here. And the other guy that is definitely huge on the offensive line for the Calgary Stampeders that is big in protecting Bo is Derek Dennis. He's also, I said, the character on the offensive line there, but he could have either made an argument for Shane Bergman or Derek Dennis here, but maybe we'll give Shane Bergman the little edge here, as he's been the steady veteran on our offensive line here. Special teams here, well, definitely I agree with Nate Hawley here, as he's definitely been a tackling machine on special teams here, and he's definitely stood out here also on defense too, but which also you can make an argument on the rookie here, because Nate Hawley also is the nominee for rookie and special teams for the Calgary Stampeders. The only other rookie that you might make an argument for, and I actually think maybe he had a little better, was Raheem Wilson on the secondary there. Another reason why I say Trey Robertson has made our secondary much better there, and you can also say kudos to Josh Bell there. He makes his nice dance moves at warm-up, and he's definitely made some nice moves on how to play secondary and always be a threat here, so it's just beyond just Trey Robertson here. So congratulations to team winners here. We'll see if any of these guys get the West nominee, and see if any of these guys will take home some hardware Thursday here in Calgary at the Grey Cup Festival at the awards ceremony. But ultimately, there's one piece of hardware that I'm more concerned about, and that gets awarded after the 107th Grey Cup. Actually, that's for last thing for praise here is actually Bo Levi Mitchell. He actually was the most outstanding player for October here. He was the player of the month for October. In October, I mean, he definitely had a huge month individually there, as he threw for 107 for one. He was 107 for 148. He threw for 1,449 yards, and he threw for 10 touchdowns here for a completion percentage of 72.3% here. So Bo was the player of the month for October here. And then let's refresh the player of the week honors at one of the three players that they each highlight for player of the week here. Some Stampeders got some award player of the week honors here back in week 3. Eric Rogers was named player of the week. Week 4 was Trey Robertson, and then week 10 Reggie Bagleton was one of the players of the week. Week 14, both Trey Robertson and Eric Rogers both got player of the week honors, and then week 19 Reggie Bagleton here. So there was definitely some guys, all the players that were named in the player of the week honors actually got it twice. Trey Robertson, Reggie Bagleton, and Eric Rogers here. So those are definitely the best individual performances they had throughout the season here. So if you look at the final standings here, so in the West Division here, the Saskatchewan Roughriders finished first with a 13-5 record here. I think they definitely played a lot better than I thought they were. I mean, there was question marks about quarterback and rookie coach here, and be able to put points on the board. They were able to have a great defense, but the Saskatchewan Roughriders finished first at 13-5, so they get the host the Western Final here. Calgary Stampeders were 12-6, finished second here. That's pretty much where I thought this team would be. Take a little step back with all the turnover and injuries here, but still have a competitive team, so they finished second and will host the West semifinal here. Winnipeg Blue Bombers were not far behind. They were 11-7 here, so the Calgary Stampeders will get to play the Winnipeg Blue Bombers again in the playoffs this year, this time a week earlier for the West semifinal. And keep in mind here, if Calgary did not win this game, Winnipeg would have gotten second place and hosted the West semifinal because they had the tiebreak on us in the season series here. We had a tiebreak on the Saskatchewan Roughriders if we had the same record with them. So, like I say, 11-7, third place. Fourth place, the Edmonton Eskimos were 8-10 here. However, they're going to go to the playoffs because they had a greater record than the third place team in the East here, so they're going to cross over as when they get to the East Ends. And then the BC Lions finished last with 5-13 there. I've definitely got to say they're the most disappointing team of the season, as they definitely underachieved there, especially when they made the biggest free agent signing there. But protection issues and their young coaching staff, so it's hard to say what's going to happen with the BC Lions here in the offseason. So that's the West standings. I'll put the standings in the description here. In the East Division here, well, the Hamilton Tiger Cats, I definitely thought for sure they were going to finish first in the East here. They finished first, and this was their best regular season ever at 15-3 here. So the Hamilton Tiger Cats are definitely heavily favored to be coming here to Calgary in a couple of weeks here for the 107th Grey Cup. Who finished second? Well, the Montreal Alouettes. Actually, I think they surprised. They had too many question marks, especially with the quarterback, and after they had to release Johnny Manziel there. But then there was ownership uncertainty. They were looking for an owner, and then the fact the head coach was fired just before the regular season, and eventually the general manager got fired, Kavis Reed here, to make sure everyone was the head coach. He wasn't really a fit, but you know, it's just weird the timing of those moves. But Curry Jones and Vernon Adams Jr. definitely were the big reasons why the Montreal Alouettes were able to move up like they did and get themselves back into the playoffs here. So with that, the Hamilton Tiger Cats will be hosting the Eastern Final here, and the Montreal Alouettes will actually be hosting the Edmonton Eskimos in the East semifinal here. Because the Toronto Argonauts, they were third in the East, but they were 4-14. I think they definitely have disappointed this season. I thought they were going to be a little better, but they were 4 games below Edmonton. And then the Ottawa Redblacks, I thought they were going to take a step back, but they definitely took a huge, huge step back because they got decimated free agency. They finished the season 3-15. Now, how the heck did we lose to these guys? The first game of the regular season, and then the second time when we played Ottawa, we had to win in a field goal to come back and win it. And Ottawa was criticized because they conceded a safety for field position. How the heck did we have those close games against Ottawa back in July? Sure, you could say teams were different then, but looking back, it's like we struggled against Ottawa this year. I guess it's a West thing where we struggle with Ottawa, both politics and in football here. But so that's the final standings here. So looking ahead to the 2019 CFL playoffs here, is that on Sunday, November the 10th here, you have the East semifinal. You got the Edmonton Eskimos going over to crossover to take on the Montreal Alouettes. That game will be at Percival Molson Stadium. That'll be a 11 a.m. Mountain Time kickoff here. And then the West semifinal, you got the Winnipeg Blue Bombers taking on the Calgary Stampeders, and that game will be at McMahon Stadium. That'll be a 2:30 kickoff Mountain Time here. So that will be the semifinal story here. And then the final story here, the finals will be played on Sunday, November the 17th. The East Final, the Hamilton Tiger Cats are hosting that one, so they're either going to be playing the Edmonton Eskimos or the Montreal Alouettes, whoever wins that game. That game will be at Tim Hortons Field at 11 a.m. Mountain Time kickoff here. And then the Western Final, the Saskatchewan Roughriders will be hosting. They're either going to play the Winnipeg Blue Bombers or the Calgary Stampeders. That would be a 2:30 kickoff at New Mosaic Stadium. And then the 107th Grey Cup, which will be here in Calgary, that'll be a 4 p.m. kickoff Mountain Time at McMahon Stadium. And obviously the winners of the East and West Finals will get to meet for that here. So that's the looking ahead here. So I'll just go over some quick stats here for the Calgary Stampeders here. For the quarterback here, I mean, we got to highlight both Bo Levi Mitchell and Nick Arbuckle here, because you got to remember Nick Arbuckle was also a big part of Calgary's success this season, as he took over pretty much the first half of the season here and won us some games here. So first Bo was 274 for 115. He threw for 3,464 yards. He had 19 touchdowns and 11 interceptions here. And his average yards per game was just under 315 yards. And he had 5 games over 300 yards here. However, Nick Arbuckle, let me say, he also had a pretty good season in relief here. He was 174 for 238 for passing here. He threw for 2,103 yards here. He threw for 11 touchdowns and only 5 interceptions here. And then his yards per game average, however, was only 150.2 yards, and he had 3 games actually over 300 yards here. But Nick Arbuckle, he definitely, he did an admirable job for Bo when he had his shoulder injury. And maybe this will be a scary thought for the CFL here, but at this time of year, Bo says he's usually dealing with nagging injuries here. Bo says he's feeling much better than ever after he had his shoulder worked on at the first half of the season here. So, that's why I'm still believing that I'm going to be jumping up and down and celebrating in episode 8 here, because we got Bo. That's the one advantage we have over the other teams here. But we still got to play the games, and anything can happen in a single game elimination here. So that's the quarterbacks. So rushing here, this was definitely a very sore spot for the Calgary Stampeders this year, as we had injuries. We definitely was inconsistent at the rushing game this year, and it seemed like every game there was someone else rushing here. Actually, the leading rusher for the Calgary Stampeders this season actually was Kadeem Carey. He had 422 yards on the 75 carries here, according to the Stamp stats here. He had 2 touchdowns here, and like I say, his average per game was 52.8 yards. So Kadeem Carey's average per carry was actually 5.6 yards here. So he actually, and like I said, he was done for the year here. Actually, who was second was actually Terry Williams. He had 275 yards and 53 carries. Average yards per carry at 5.2 yards, but he's mostly used as our returner. He had a touchdown here. So and then the third guy, who actually was the guy who thought we would have a feature back this year, is actually Don Jackson, but he was actually hurt a lot more this season. He had 246 yards and 58 carries for a 4.2 yard average carry here. He only had 2 touchdowns, and his yards per game average was only 35.1 here. And even Anti Milonovich Leader, who's a power back and was actually used occasionally here, he managed to get 58 yards and 40 carries here. An average yards per carry for 4 yards here. So I'm going to say the running game definitely was a sore spot for Calgary this year. But we had a time where we had Kadeem Carey starting, Terry Williams starting, Don Jackson started at the start of the year and then got hurt. Then we can throw in Anti Milonovich Leader here, and actually Romar Morris, who I'm just going to say it's so success he actually played this season, because it looked like last season he wasn't going to play at all. So it was definitely a rough year for being a running back for the Calgary Stampeders here. However, you could say the same about receiving here, because we lost Joanne Breskison, we lost Markeith Ambles here. However, we've got some younger guys that stepped up here. Obviously the leading receiver for the Calgary Stampeders was Reggie Bagleton. He had 1,444 yards on 102 catches. He had 10 touchdowns here, and his yards per average game was just under 85 yards here. So Reggie Bagleton is definitely going to be looked upon as one of the top receivers in the league. And actually Eric Rogers, he also broke the 1,000 yard count here. He had 1,080 yards on 85 catches here. 10 touchdowns. So to both Reggie Bagleton and Eric Rogers both had 10 touchdowns here. Eric Rogers averages 63.5 yards per game here. However, the third place was the guy we drafted in the first round. this past Canadian College draft, Hergy Maala. He had 560 yards on 38 catches here. 5 touchdowns there, and his average per game is 46.8 yards here. I should add in that Reggie Bagleton had 500-yard games. I'll get my standings back up here. Eric Rogers had 300-plus yard games, and Hergy Maala had 2. And then another guy that's also stepped up is Josh Huff here. He had 491 yards on 37 catches here. He had a touchdown there. His average per game is 49.9 yards here. So, and even then, Richie Sidani, Colton Hunchuk. I think we definitely have some depth here that someone could step up. Because obviously Reggie Bagleton and Eric Rogers are the 2 key receivers for Calgary. And, you know, it's nice to actually have some depth here that could come in handy for us in the playoffs here. So on the defensive side of the ball here, Winton McManus ultimately led the team in tackles with 86, but I'll highlight that Kroy Greenwood was injured for like the last third of the season. He had 79 tackles, and then Nate Holley had 76 tackles here, and I'll say Jamar Wall 67, and Brandon Smith, he had 59 tackles, and Brandon Smith said he's going to retire this year, and then, like I say, we definitely have a lot of guys who have 40s here. So who led the team in sacks? Well, that goes to Cordell Orlaw. He had 10 sacks here, and actually he did not dress in this game. Chris Casher had 7 sacks, and then Mike Rose had 5, and Derek Wigan had 4 here. So definitely, you know, some newer guys that are making an impact on defense here. And interceptions here, ultimately, Trey Roberson finished the season with 7 here. He had like 5 in like the first 3 weeks of the season here. And he had a couple plays called back there, so Trey Roberson could add a few more interceptions here. Then Deshaun Amos, the rookie, he had 5 interceptions here, and then a bunch of guys with 3 and 2. So definitely some big names on the interception there. So it's not all just Trey Roberson here, and then Brandon Smith, Deshaun Amos, and Trey Roberson each had a touchdown on an interception on a defensive play this season here. So that's definitely the defensive side of the ball. Quick stats there. Then the kick returns here, while Terry Williams led the way. He had 953 yards on 42 returns, and his average was 222.7 yards, and he had a touchdown on a kickoff return. Punt return, there was no touchdowns that we produced, but we certainly seemed to allow a lot of them. Hopefully you clean that up. But Terry Williams led the way. He had 66 returns for 679 yards here, which it's always harder to return a punt than a kickoff return. And then for kicking, Rene Paredes, he still had a solid 82.7% percentage kicking field goals here. 43 for 52 there, but there was a couple close games that he seemed to have slipped up a little, but his longest field goal was 50 yards here. Actually, his extra point, he only missed that one there, but however, that unfortunately, the one that he missed there was that game in Winnipeg where Janarian Grant returned that for 2 points, and that definitely proved costly there. But all they said, Rene still had a solid season, and Rob Maver, he averaged 43.3 yards in punting here, and he's still looked upon as one of the best directional punters in the CFL here. So that's like Calgary Stampeders this month, recapping the one game in November for the close out the 2019 CFL regular season here. So I mean, of course, if you enjoy everything I do on my YouTube channel, just make sure you hit like, subscribe. I obviously recap sports by throwing the odd personal blog, and I shared a bunch of senior videos and that. So I do have a lot to offer on my YouTube channel. If that sounds like anything you like, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon here. And I say thanks for watching this whole season here, and you know, let's bring on the 107th Grey Cup here, and I'll be back with my On the Road to the Grey Cup videos here, as I'll make my notes, and usually what I do is I read the breakdown on CFL.ca, and then I come to my conclusions, and then I make my video and decide who I think has the edge, and feel who I think is going to win, and look back at some playoff history and fun there. So I'll be making those videos here, the preview of the 5 games there, and then there'll be an episode 8. Hopefully recapping the 3 games and the Grey Cup win here, but I can still dream. I'm still dreaming that we are going to be in the Grey Cup this year at home and bring it home here, but you know, I'll recap the 107th Grey Cup game out of the way in episode 8 here. So I'm going to say this has definitely been a more up and down season as defending champs, and we definitely have overcome, but we also have overcome a lot of injuries last year, but last year was finally getting that Grey Cup after 2 heartbreaking losses the year before. This year is about, we brought the cup home. Now let's keep it home here, but we got some stiff competition here, and that's the thing. Ideally, I would have wanted that Western final date here and maybe get some guys back here, but you know, I still feel we have Bo, and playing the Winnipeg Blue Bombers will definitely be a tough one, but you know, the road to getting back to the Grey Cup isn't going to be easy here, and of course I'm really would want a Calgary Edmonton Grey Cup here, but I think the Edmonton Eskimos definitely have a lot more work to do than the Calgary Stampeders, because they're crossing over and they got to play Montreal, and then they got to knock off Hamilton here, and Edmonton actually limped themselves down the stretch there. So you'll see in my preview videos here when I talk about those games, and that's the other thing. We got to go into Saskatchewan and face the rabid fan base in Riderville here. However, we did beat Saskatchewan both times in the regular season here, so I'm expecting anything possible here in the Grey Cup here. And let's just be hypothetical here, as there's one guy who sits near me. He's mostly a Hamilton fan, but he also cheers for Winnipeg. I do wonder what would happen if we had a Winnipeg-Hamilton Grey Cup. Actually, that would be interesting, just because both of those teams have not won the Grey Cup yet in the 21st century, and for his sake and those 2 teams, it'd just be interesting. I would settle for that if Calgary is not in the Grey Cup, but there's also the thought of having to deal with Riderville again, just like 10 years ago when we hosted it, but I'm ready for anything to be possible here. So thanks for watching. Go Stamps go, and let's bring that Grey Cup. Let's keep the cup home this year. I'm ready to party and taking the festivities out of the way, and I always go to the game once I have a ticket. I'm at the game out of the way, and I'll be in my red out of the way, but to represent. But it's always that much better when your team's in it and win it. But anyway, go Stamps, and I'll see you in the next video here.